Welcome back to the happy hour. As always, good to be back. Good to be here. Name of the game today is buffs, nerfs, and bans. There we go. First off the bat, Alrun's Epiphany is banned. Bye bye zero, banned. Faceless Haven, banned. Standard's all I really care about. So, what does that mean overall? Let me just a bit there. All right, cool. What does that mean overall? Alrun's Epiphany. If you like extra turns, no more extra turns. Deal with it. It finally happened. It was a long time coming. And it needed to be done too. It just wasn't fun anymore with the way things were going. And I feel like they ban extra turn cards all the time anyway, and they just don't learn not to make these anymore. Yeah, it's all the cards I dislike. Most of the cards I dislike. Well, I guess in Alchemy they nerfed the other cards that I dislike. We'll get into that. Yeah, but it's about time this was banned. I mean, this thing was just. I it's a little weird though that it took this long because it's been out since Kaldheim, and it really hasn't had that much play except for the past like couple months because of things that came out in Crimson Vow and Midnight Hunt. But it's gone forever. Divide by zero. This was a surprising one, but it's pretty nice. So this one was a 2 and blue instant. Turn target spell or permanent with mana value 1 or greater to its owner's hand, and then you learn. So this was like the key bounce spell that got around people playing Leer in the blue decks, where Leer has an ability that no spells can be countered. But this is not a counter spell. This is a bounce. So you can still cast this to bounce your opponent's stuff, or you could bounce Leer and protect him, and then run counters after that. It was a real pain in the butt. And then it has learn mechanic on it as well, so you can just grab stuff off your sideboard, which is no good. And the Faceless Haven, this is their answer for all the aggro decks. So pretty much mono white and mono green. It probably was the best creature land that was out there for pretty cheap cost. You got a 4/3 creature with vigilance, and it's all creature types, which worked out in some other decks if you're running tribal zombies, humans, skeletons, things like that. It worked out pretty well. So for how this affects aggro for mono green, I don't think it affects it that much. Honestly, you'll get the rare wild cards. So if you haven't gotten all the Lair of the Hydras yet, trade those out for Lair of the Hydra. And then unless you are really into Blizzard Ball, you can probably get rid of your Snowlands as well. For mono white, just get rid of Snowlands. This is the only reason to play Snowlands with mono white. So you might as well take them out. So if you're going mirror against another mono white and they have Redain, you don't have to worry about your lands coming in tapped. I'd say trade out. I wouldn't trade out if you're running 4 Faceless Havens or you were. I wouldn't trade them out for Cave of the Frost Dragons, just because it's really mana heavy. I think it's 4 and a white to get Cave of the Frost Dragon out there. So it's pretty expensive. So maybe 2 of those and then run some Kabir takedown, because you get a tap land out of it if you don't need to run it, and then you can use it as a removal spell, kind of like how Blizzard Brawl is done in mono green. But definitely take out your Snowlands. There's no reason to have Snowlands in mono white anymore. And I still think Redain is worth it, since even though probably less decks are going to. I probably shouldn't say that. I'd say mono white is probably the only deck now that's not going to play Snowlands that was playing Snowlands previously, because mono black is definitely still going to play Snowlands for Blood on the Snow. That's a must. Definitely need to have that. So you can still have the advantage of Redain against mono black removal or anything else, any type of black removal that will run Blood on the Snow. And then it also still has the 4 mana tax on it. So if any on creature spells that cost 4 or more cost, I think 1 more for Redain. So it's still pretty good to have. I wouldn't take Redain out just because one color isn't playing Snowlands anymore. So that is the ban announcement. Legacy, Historic, I don't really play much, so I don't want to comment on things that I don't really know that well. The buffs and the nerfs. Alchemy rebalancing. Here we go. So this is the first one to happen since Alchemy's launch. It balanced 18 rebalanced cards and they brought back Teferi Time Traveler, Time Raveler. Sorry, Time Raveler. So first thing they did was put a bunch of buffs for cards that have the Venture into the Dungeon ability, which is going to be the highlight for the video today, because it was pretty much a lost mechanic. Nobody was running Venture into the Dungeon stuff except probably in that standard 22 period. So first buff is Asarak the Archlich. So they've adjusted, so remove the opponent's option to sacrifice a creature on the attack trigger. So I don't know if this is a buff or a nerf. Depends on how you look at it. So beforehand, whenever Asarak the Archlich attacks, it created a 2/2 black zombie creature tokens equal to the number of opponents that you have. And then it used to say, unless opponent sacrifices a creature. So that means that you get the 2/2 no matter what. But at the same time, depending on what creatures they have, sometimes it's better if you get the forced sacrifice out of it, if they really want to do that. But I don't think people were taking the bait on the sacrifice too much, so they just took it off the table there. Some from parts, this is lowered from lowered from 3 black to 1 black and black. Even though it says one, the ability cost that. So it's a 1 black instant, target creature card in your graveyard perpetually gains 1/2 black, exile this card from your graveyard, shuffle it into your library, create a token that's a copy of it, that's a 4/4 black zombie, in addition to its other types. Activate only as a sorcery. So might be good for zombie aggro. Honestly, I have not seen this card, but let me know what you think about that. Blood Rage Alpha, went from 4/3 to 4/4. Doesn't really matter. I really haven't seen people running this deck this card anyway. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Cloister Gargoyle. So he's gone from a 2 and a white to a 1 and a white, and toughness went from 0/4 to 0/3. That's about it. It's a pretty good card, I think, for the Venture into the Dungeon. So whenever it enters the battlefield, you venture, and then once you complete a dungeon, it gets +3/+0 and has flying. So it becomes a 3/3 and with flying once you complete a dungeon. So it's pretty good. Dungeon Descent. This thing got buffed pretty well. So you removed entered the battlefield tap. Pretty nice. And it costs only 1 mana to activate its ability from 4 mana before. That's huge. So now it's just a non-color land, and no longer enters tap. So that's pretty nice. That's a lot better now for the 1 and a tap. Again, still can only activate as a sorcery. It'd be nice if you could do it on the opponent's step 2, but might be a little bit too powerful than if you had instant speed. Eliwick, not too many people run this anyway, but basically the third Planeswalker ability is now a -6 or a -7. Not a huge deal. Face Reversal, I think, is a nice card. So now it just costs 1 black from a 1 and a black, and returns up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and you venture into the dungeon. So it's a real cheap retrieval card right here from your graveyard. Find the Path now adds 2 mana of any 1 color. Before it used to be 2 green. So what this does, it enchants a land. When Find the Path enters the battlefield, venture into dungeon, and now you can add 2 mana of any color. For a 2 and a green, I don't know how beneficial it would be for Simic or Green Ramp. town-razer is a 3/4 from a 3/3. I don't think it's a big deal. I haven't seen this played all too much. More for venture stuff. So Precipitous Drop goes from 2 black to a 1 black, which is a pretty nice removal. So it's an enchantment aura. When it enters battlefield, you venture into the dungeon again. Enchanted creature gets -2/-2, and it gets -5/-5 as long as you've completed a dungeon. So pretty nice cheap removal spell that works in dungeon decks. Triumphant Adventure, I think this is a nice buff. So it went from a 1/1 to a 2/1. Paired with its ability, so as long as it's your turn, Triumphant Adventure has first strike with Death Touch. And whenever Triumphant Adventure attacks, you venture into the dungeon. It was a pretty good attacker before alone, like even aside from the venture into the dungeon ability. Having a 1/1 first strike Death Touch, like that's really nice, because you have to double block it in order to kill it at all. So now that it's a 2/1, it's even stronger than before, and it's definitely gonna be run in the venture into the dungeon decks. All right, more card adjustments. So now we've adjusted Divide by 0. So now it only learns if it targets a spell or permanent without mana value of 4 or less. Basically, it can't bounce the big boys. So, or bounce your own creature. So if you're going to be using this to save your Leer or your Kraken, as in Hullbreaker Horror, you don't learn anymore. So that's a tough break. So this really only works for bouncing your opponent's spells, because I don't think there's anything being run and control that with mana value 4 or less that you would want to bounce. Fearsome Whelp. I'm gonna call this a nerf. So it gains haste. Not a big deal though, because it's only a 1/1. So it's it's not playing into the traditional mono red for a haste type of card. But now the trigger is on the upkeep instead of the end step. So at the beginning of your upkeep, each dragon card in your hand perpetually gains this spell costs 1 less to cast. So what does this mean for playing this card? That means that your opponent pretty much has their turn to interact with it. So they'll probably remove it in some way, some form, so that way its triggered ability doesn't activate and you get all your dragons for super cheap. Hullbreaker Horror. Removed. This spell can't be countered. Something had to be nerfed on Hullbreaker Horror. This thing is the most OP card in Standard and Alchemy right now. So it still has the flash. It still has whenever you cast a spell, you can choose return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand, and return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So it's still basically a 2-in-1 bouncer, but still now it can be countered. So if you're running a mirror deck, you can still counter it at least. All right, next. Oh, the captain. I forgot about the captain. So I've been running this with clerics and mono white, and it is a key staple for both those decks. So now it's removed if you cast it and to the enters the battlefield ability. So what happened before was throw down your Inquisitor Captain. You would seek 2 creature cards, and then you can put them onto the battlefield. So if you saw out another Inquisitor Captain or common combo that was being run was with a Glasspool Mimic that they specified right here. So when Glasspool Mimic enters the battlefield, it can come out as a copy as a creature you already own. So if you got the Glasspool Mimic, you could copy Inquisitor Captain and run the combo again. Now it says that you must cast Inquisitor Captain to get the combo going. Basically, the combo is out. And if you get another Inquisitor Captain, actually I don't think that works. Benefit 3 or less, you couldn't get Inquisitor Captain anyway. So sorry, I take that back. It was just for Glasspool Mimic. So that combination is pretty much out, and it looks like Soul Herder in Historic was the same type of deal going on there as well. Still pretty good. I mean, especially the way Clerics and Mono White is run, you still want to do it because you get two creatures for 1 out of this cast. All right, my favorite nerf of all, Lear, Disciple of the Drowned. No longer added during. Actually, sorry. It adds during your turn to the flashback ability. Fantastic. This is a fantastic nerf for Lear for people who don't like playing against control. So now it says, as long as it's your turn, each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard has flashback. Before, it had flashback whenever. So as soon as you put Lear down on the table, you had your full hand of cards to cast and your full graveyard of cards to cast, which really tough to fight against on your turn, on their turn, all in between. So now when it's your turn, you don't have to worry about Lear casting anything from the graveyard. You just have to worry about it on their turn. As I called out here, like combination with Fading Hope was it was pretty crazy. So now it kind of, in the way that Fearsome Whelp got nerfed, it's going to be easier for the opponent to interact with Lear on their turn. So you can cast removal with less of a chance of them having a bounce spell. If they still have it in their hand, they still have it in their hand. But at least now you won't see the doom and gloom of their graveyard when you see 3 Fading Hopes in there, or 2 Divide by Zeros, and you're like, well, there's not a single spell I can get off to get rid of Lear. A couple more left. So Sanguine Brushstroke, they removed the life gain from sacrificing the blood token trigger. Still think this is a pretty good card though. Yeah, I don't think people are going to stop playing this in the mono black sacrifice deck that's been going around. So definitely staying in there. You just don't get the extra life gain, which was pretty helpful for them. But you still get the Conjure Blood Artist, which is like the key to the deck. And like I said, they didn't want to touch Meathook Massacre, which I'm fine with. I like Meathook the way it is, and I think a lot of people who run black control like it the way it is too. town-razer Tyrant got a huge nerf. So now you can only target non-basic lands. So what town-razer Tyrant did before, when it entered the battlefield, you got to choose any land and that you don't control, and loses all abilities except and gains at the beginning of your upkeep. This permanent deals 2 damage to you unless you sacrifice it. So this forced a lot of people just to just keep burning their land. So at a certain point they didn't want to get the two life triggers going on there, because that adds up after a while. So now you can only target a non-basic land with it. So your Faceless Havens, all the other creature lands, or any of the dual lands. So basically they can't go after mountains, plains, swamps, islands, and forests. I'm like, what color am I missing here? Yeah, so you can still keep all your basic lands. So a good way to combat the town-razer tyrant cast would be, within the first 4 turns, if you can, only throw down basic lands, depending on the type of deck you're playing. Because if they have Fearsome Whelp out, they can get this thing out on turn 3 or turn 4. So if you just use your basic lands within that time frame, it's going to be a waste of a cast for town-razer tyrant unless they really need the 4/4 flyer, which is powerful on its own rights anyway. But and then Teferi Time Raveler comes back. I don't know the history behind this card. You can go to Reddit and check out everybody's reactions to this. So it costs 2 white and a blue from 1 white and a blue, and now has 5 starting loyalty instead of 4. And the stack ability becomes your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. So that's pretty crazy static ability right there. So I'm sure control decks will start playing this again, and we'll see more of that. But all right, let's jump into the arena now and go over the deck list for today.